Here I've got a stock factory sound called up from the Kontakt Factory library. It's in the bank called Synth, and then in the sub-bank for Mallet, and it's a nice straight-ahead clean sound. And it sounds nice. Now I want to look in this video at working with the phrases tool, so we can get to it from there. And I'm going to click here and we'll see a palette of presets. So I'm just going to load this one in called Easy. And what the phrases tool allows us to do is to play musical phrases on the Kontakt instruments by pressing a single key. So we have collections of phrases that are called phrase sets, and each set contains 7 phrases, and that's just what I loaded in here by calling up one of these. And when we load these phrase sets into the tool like I just did, the 7 phrases are directly available on the dedicated white keys on the MIDI keyboard that we see here. Now, we have the phrase selector and phrase set browser here, and we have scale lock and scale selector here, which is similar to what we saw with the chords tool. So here, I'm going to lock this to E minor. I have a little thing that I have here that I want to create some phrases for. And this is kind of like an idea generator. So I'm going to set this to the root key of E and set it to minor, and I'm going to lock it. And you'll notice that this changed. So now these will all be transposed. And we can use this over here to either switch between next and previous phrases, and you'll see here that the scale and key are locked as I do that. And we can also just click over here to choose a random one, or we can click here to get the phrase tool browser, where we can filter based on these tags and select what we want. And then whichever key we play, it'll select this, and then we can use this to drag and drop directly into the DAW. I'm going to click here to close it, and let's just try some of these stock phrases with a little accompaniment and see if any of them work nicely. So they all work and they all have interesting possibilities, and we can modify them. So we have this global edit mode here, and when this is on, when it's switched to the right like this, and it's white, that means that the parameters have no color, and the edits that we do here are going to apply globally to all of the 7 phrases in the set. Now when it's off, switch to the left here, we'll see it color-coded, and the parameters mirror the color of the phrase, and the edits will apply only to the selected phrase here, and you can see the colors update as I select the different phrases. But let's leave it in global mode. So we use this pencil tool to get in to the actual editing parameters. I'm going to close it for a moment, and I just want to draw your attention to these quick edit controls. They're shortcuts for 2 of the controls that are buried in this edit mode. So it's kind of like a quick access thing. So here we can rotate and have it start on a different step in the pattern. And let's try that with the groove. I can rotate it some more. So this is all the same phrase I'm triggering, just starting it in different positions. I can invert the intervals. That's really interesting. Again, all from the same trigger note. So really interesting creative possibilities. Now, when we get into the edit mode, we can dig a bit deeper. So we have time, pitch, and velocity. So in time, the timing of when the notes are triggered and how they're triggered, we can see the rotate control here, which is one of the quick edit controls. We can make the notes more staccato. For shorter notes or more legato. And of course, this will all depend on the type of sound you have as well, how much it responds to this. Now, this is really interesting. We can quantize this. We have a drop-down menu here for subdivisions, but not only can we quantize, and you'll see them moving, we can also, here, I'm going to get some harmony generated here. We can also bend the timing so that the rhythm is skewed more ahead or behind. Again, let me play it with the groove so we can really get a sense of that. Bend it more. Unquantize it a bit. So you see that we're all grouped together there. I can change the time of that. Or weight them more the other way. So all this with the same specific trigger note. So there's a lot of flexibility in here how you can modify these. So we also have pitch, or we can invert the intervals, which you saw me do in the quick control, but we can also transpose. I'll go back to the same trigger note. So you can transpose by semitones, and you can also offset the velocities by tilting. And again, it depends on the sound. This one isn't particularly velocity sensitive, but you can flip them and set minimum and maximum ranges. Now, we also have the phrase playback controls here. So let me just play it for you now to remind you what it sounds like. We can play it in reverse. And we can play either only the first half, second half. Second half. So again, more ways of modifying it, or both halves. And we can also loop it. Now, when the loop is dragged all the way to the left here, it'll just keep looping indefinitely, but we can loop it a specific number of times, and then it'll stop at the end of the third time it goes through, for example. There's the second. My finger's down on the key. The third time. And it stops on its own. Or we can have it just play until the pattern ends. And that's if we're playing with different lengths of it. Now, we can also edit what part is being looped by dragging in this circle. So here, I'm just going to loop this little bit of it. And the rest is silent. And that's because it's playing until pattern end. But if I go to the loop end, we'll just loop that little bit. So again, more potential variety. Here we go. And there, loop 3 times and stop. And change what parts I'm looping. Again, stopped after 3. So really, there's a lot that you can generate and create. Now, if you want to reset your edits, you can always click this, and it'll undo and bring it back to the default. And you can see that it's gone now since it's been reset, but it maintains the loop length. So let's close the edit mode, and we'll continue exploring here. So we have a phrase selector and a phrase slot selector. So when follow is on here, when I trigger the note, it'll update and show me in front of me what's being triggered. Now, when this is off, it won't change and update. It'll still trigger the appropriate phrase based on what note I'm playing, but it doesn't update the display. So we can trigger our keyboard or just click here to select the different phrases. And here we got a browser where we can, let's say I want to change just the phrase in that slot. I can go to that and maybe audition it. Okay, so that's great. I'm going to go with that one. So now I've customized my phrase slots. So here's the first one from the Easy Bank, and the next one. So you can customize your palette of 7 that you're working with. And we can use the dice here to just randomly call one up. And that's a nice way of exploring. And again, it's just going to affect the slot that you're clicking on. Really a lot to explore here. And we have a latch button, so you don't have to hold your note down on the keyboard. Now, this is really fun. We can randomize, which sets random values to most time, pitch, and velocity parameters of the phrases. And these include the rotate and invert knobs, these quick edit controls, and the remaining parameters as well that are in here. So we get this little random button here when we're in the edit mode. I'll click that one, and you can see it's just randomized that. Let me click this one, the one we've been working with, and I'll just maybe make it loop longer. And I can randomize. So it's editing not just those, but all the controls within. So a lot of fun to explore that way. And again, we have this reset button. Now we also have the playback controls here. We have slider for dynamics. We can transpose by octave. And we can play back at half time or double time speed. And we can affect some swing on here with these same quantized possibilities. And again, with the groove, we'll hear and get a sense of the feel of this. Really interesting. You can get some really interesting ahead or behind the beat kind of feels. Now we can always drag and drop from here directly into the DAW, and it'll bring that phrase in. And we've got some of the advanced mapping options like we saw with the chords tool. And when you've modified your phrase sets and you want to save it, you can always right-click here in the navigator, and you can save the preset as you can do with the chords as well. We'll continue with more in the next video.